Welcome to my survival YouTube channel. This video is an introduction to the very wide subject of tracking. I attempt to compile the most important areas and knowledge when it comes to tracking. So after watching this video, you can have the basic tools with which you can start learning and training and practicing tracking by yourself. The knowledge that I present in this video I got from several other YouTube channels, websites connected to the wide area of survival, hunting and other outdoor subjects. And on top of that, I would like to add my own research and experience that I got by using that knowledge and skills in the wilderness. We have to organize this very wide subject into 6 areas. The first area is track interpretation. The meaning of this is pretty straightforward. It's to get to know what kind of wildlife, what kind of animal was here and made the track, what kind of creature is using this trail. And this gives us like a basics of where to start when we try to make our picture of the situation around. The second area is trailing. It means finding out in which direction the animal was going, from where the animal came, to where the animal was going, which areas of the landscape, of the forest are connected by the trail. Next area is aging, and it means finding out when the track was made, so we can establish how often the animal is using the trail, that we can find out in what times of the day the animal is most frequently using the trail. This gives us a huge amount of information, crucial information, when it comes to hunting, photographing, camping, or any other aspect when it comes to interacting with the animal. The area number 4 is environmental tracking. And this involves assessing the topography of the landscape, vegetation in the landscape, and dominant conditions in the landscape, and the way they impact and shape the patterns of wildlife movements in the area. The area number 5 is track interpretation. This discipline involves getting information on what happened in the area when the track was made. Was the animal walking slowly? Was it running? Was it chasing something? Was it running from something? Jumping? Did it stop suddenly? This gives us another set of information that we add to the overall picture of our situation around in the landscape. And the last area of tracking is psychological tracking. How the animal is feeling. I invite you to see more details when it comes to track identification. Follow me. Alright, when you think about tracking, you probably imagine a clear imprint on the ground. In reality, the first thing you will encounter in the forest when it comes to tracking will be trail. Not a track, it will be trail. Because a track is a point. It's just a point, mathematically speaking. And the trail is a line. It's much bigger and it's much easier to come across with. And the other aspect of this is that the surface of the ground in the forest is covered by leaves, it's covered by sticks, by some other debris, and it will effectively hide the track from you. The areas in the forest when the ground is suitable to leave a clear imprint is rare. So as I said before, you will encounter a trail, and the trail looks like this. Looks like a path, like a human path, but it will be more narrow, it will be more straight, and you will not find any trash on it. And if you know that you are in the area, that there are no houses around, and you see a path like this, you will know that this is an animal trail. When you are looking on this, you have to assess how wide is the trail. In this case, it is fairly narrow, so we can assume that it is used by medium-sized wildlife all the way to the small. So now we move on to another place, very close, so I can show you another aspect of the trail which you can use to assess what kind of animal is using it. Follow me. Here we got another feature of the trail from which we can deduct more information about the wildlife, and this feature is the vegetation, horizontal vegetation, above the floor of the trail, as you can see here. If you can see this, you can assume that this trail is used by small and little medium animals, because otherwise, if it were large animals, the horizontal vegetation would be destroyed. So the trail would look like the trail right next to this one. As you can see, this trail, this is the bed of the trail, and in case of this one, we have no horizontal vegetation above the floor of the trail, and the trail itself is wider, and the vegetation on the ground is disordered more than in the previous one, and even more in the case of the first one that I showed. This is very important information in case you don't find any other evidence when it comes to assessing what types of animals are here, and you have to make, for example, a trap. You will have to take this information into account and make different types of traps on the trail to the right and different type of traps on the trail to the left. So let's go further with this topic. Another aspect you can use to tell what kind of animal is using the trail is scat, the animal droppings. You don't have to know every type of scat of every type of animal. You can perfectly do this in your home. You can take the books with you. You can learn this on your own. For now, this is perfectly enough for you to assess the size of an animal. And in this case, the animal was quite big. There is yet another thing on this trail by which you can tell that the animals that use it are quite big. Because of this piece of wood, it's completely destroyed. You can tell that it was kicked, it was stepped on, it was moved by the animal many times on this trail. The piece of wood will never end in the condition like this by itself. And this scat perfectly matches the piece of wood on the same trail that is completely destroyed by the animal. Another sign that we can encounter when we follow the trail are the signs on trees made by animals when they have something itchy and they want to scratch themselves, or in the springtime when they want to get rid of excess of fur that is making them too hot. And this is how we can assess how tall is the animal. Most of the time they do it on their sides, on the height of their main body mass. What I can find here is a mark of probably the horn of the animal, which was using it to touch and scratch the tree. I hope you can see these marks here, these three marks, here, here and here. To increase the chance you can see it. For almost sure, these marks were not made by the sticks. They are too light to make such impressions on the tree, and I don't see any big tree that may have created these marks when falling. Another aspect that tells me that this was probably an animal, that the pattern of the mark repeats itself. They are situated very close to each other and they have very similar size. Okay, so let us proceed to the last thing when it comes to identification, animal identification, and this is of course the footprint, the imprint on the ground. So follow me and I will show you more about this. Okay, so we have managed to find an area where it is possible to leave a clear imprint, where we have a lot of mud, which is a perfect medium to get an imprint. Now I will take the camera off the tripod and I will show you the one here. And yet again, I will not start the subject of exact identification. Based on how deep is the track, you can assess how heavy was the animal. When it comes to exact identification, you can do it just like in case of scat. You can do it all by yourself, by looking into sources in the internet, in the books. You can educate yourself in it. If I started to do it here on this video, it would take forever. I will show you more tracks I found here. We can clearly see that the animals are attracted to this place, and no wonder why, because there is water. I don't have to say that the water is the most wanted thing in survival situation, and guess what? Animals are in survival situation all the time. So we have found our last detail when it comes to tracking and identification realm of tracking. So we can go to the next area of tracking, which is trailing. But from now on, I will not use an animal track or any animal tracks in this video. I will use tracks of me, of myself, and the imprints of my boots. The reason for that is twofold. Firstly, as you could see before, the track of the animal is really small. I will have much more options to adjust camera, show you more details on the larger track, which is the track left by my boot. The second aspect is that the only track you have control of is your own. You can use your feet and your boots to create tracks whenever and wherever you want. You can make an imprint, then check on it a few hours later, a day later. You can note how the weather was changing, how the temperature was changing. I will tell more about this in the section of aging. But for now, we will focus on trailing, and we will use the impressions of my boots in order to describe details and principles when it comes to this area of tracking. Follow me. When it comes to trailing, the first thing we will need, it will be tracker's stick. Something like this. Just a stick, long for about, 3 feet. Fairly straight, it doesn't have to be perfectly straight, but fairly, just like this one. Sharpened on the, preferably the thinner end, and 2 loops around it. In this case it's my paracord. We use this stick to establish a typical pace length, and we make an impression with the knife. Because we know that we are tracking this particular animal, we know its normal length of the pace, and we have it measured. The loops closer to the end and further to the end are for measuring the pace of the animal when it goes slower than normal and faster than normal. So when, for example, if the animal goes confused or is going very slowly to be undetected or something like this, we will use this loop to measure the length of the pace. The second loop, analogically, when we know that the animal was running or moving faster and its pace got longer, then we will measure it and use this loop to make an exact measurement from the tip to the loop. So when we know when the animal is running, then we can use this length. This pace length, the middle pace length, and the short pace length. Do not skip this step, especially when you are just beginning your adventure with tracking. This will be helpful for you. Without it, you will have trouble to get a hang of predicting where the next impression will be when you see only one and you don't know where the next one is gonna be. Okay, now the real tracking starts. Now, on this mat behind me, I will make a march, like a normally paced march, around 15 feet long. Then I will analyze only one track, only one impression, and make clear to you which parts and which characteristics of the impressions are the most important when it comes to trailing and tracking overall. The specifics that I will give you are going to be specifics that you will use not only in the area of trailing, but pretty much in every area of tracking. Then I will use my tracking stick to show you how to use it in order to find another impression from the point of already known impression. I will show you how it works when somebody or something walks straight. So now I will make my march, and then we will proceed to analyzing my impressions. Follow me. Okay, so here is the impression of my boot, and on its example I will show you 3 basic characteristics of the impression which you have to take into account when interpreting in any area of tracking, and especially in trailing. We have to look on the bottom, the floor of the track, the walls of the track here, and the horizon of the track. The horizon of the track is the area around it. The walls are pretty much simple. These are the walls of the impression, and the floor area inside on the bottom of the impression. In terms of trailing, the most important characteristic of the impression is the wall. The second one is the horizon, but also important is the floor. Now I will use the tracker's stick to show you how to use it to find another impression that I made, but on purpose, not as clear as here. Let me show you. Exactly, my next step was somewhere in that area, and now I will show you how to exactly find it using my tracker stick. Follow me. Okay, so here is how you use the tracker stick to find another impression. What we do here is use the wall points on the wall of the track, which are the place where the thumb would be, and the right side of the right corner of the back of the foot. When we connect these 2 points, then our tracker stick will lead us somewhere around the next impression. The next thing we do is measuring the pace. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna connect the middle of the impression here with the middle of the impression here, like this, and then I will make a permanent impression on the stick, which indicates my typical length of my pace. So I will do it now. Okay, I have everything measured. So, as I said before, these loops are for measuring and adjusting to the animal's slower paces and faster paces. The loops are here instead of cuts because the animal, usually when it walks normal, the pace looks the same, but the animal can walk like slower or faster in some levels and degrees. It's not always the same faster and always the same slower. So that's why these two have to move and this one doesn't have to move. You know how to find the tracks when I was walking straight. Now is the time to show you the importance of this technique when you are trying to find an impression that somebody made when he was turning. Follow me. When it comes to trailing, now I have an opportunity to show you the moment of turning, where you will see the moment of turning much better than on the soil you saw a few seconds ago. So now I will perform a march on this area behind me, and in some moment I will make a turn, like a hard turn right towards you. I will over-exaggerate this turn, but it will be on purpose, so the characteristics of my track when I turn will be like very visible, so I can show you clearly what's going on there. From there you can make your own tracks when you will be turning more and more slightly, so you can analyze the track when the indications are less and less visible. But for now, to let you begin, I will show you this on like the track that has very strong characteristics of turning. So now I will proceed and perform march. Follow me. Okay, so here we have our tracks that interest us the most, and these are two tracks from when I was walking in this direction and two tracks when I was walking in this direction. So as you can see, I turned almost 90 degrees, right? The track that interests us the most is this one, the last track from this direction. So now, based on three characteristics of this track, I will show you why when we will be trailing, we will not look for the next track in direct forward area, but we will divert to the right so we can find another track, so we can continue our tracking process. Let me zoom into this one, and based on the main characteristics, I will show you why we will divert to the right in this case, and if it will be opposite, we would divert to the left. So let's see. So we will analyze the floor of the track, the wall of the track, and the horizon of the track. If we look on the bottom, on the floor of the track, we can see that the right side of the bottom of the track is deeper than the left side. This is our first indication that our object was putting more force here than there, and he tried to create like a place, that diagonal area from which he could propel itself to the right. That was the floor. The wall of the track, as you can see, is pretty clear here. We can see of course cracks, but these cracks are specific to the conditions when we have thin snow, and it works like that. The debris under the snow, when I step on it, it is pulled down and towards the center of the track, and therefore it cracks the snow and pulls it to the center of the track, and that's exactly what we see here. But other than that, the wall is intact. The wall to the left doesn't exist at all. It's completely destroyed. So that's another indication that something used way more force to your side than to my side. So again, something was pushing from the left to divert to the right. And the last characteristic is the track horizon. To the right, in this area, the horizon is perfectly intact, and in this area, as you can see, it's disrupted and destroyed. As you can see here, the snow was catapulted in your direction, just like here, and here the debris is pushed to the left, and the order of the horizon is much lower to the left than to the right. That is our last and final indication that something was pushing itself from the left to the right. And we will use this information that when we trail the track, we connect the points and we trail to the front, and we do not find any track where it would be supposed to be if the object was walking normally. We don't panic. In fact, we don't even look there. We know from this information that we have to divert to the right from the line to find another one. And that's exactly where it is. It's not here in this area where it should be, but it's here, diverted to the right. And based on the same characteristics, the same techniques of trailing, we find another one and another one and another one. And that's how it works. When it comes to trailing, that would be it. And let's proceed to the next area of tracking, which is track aging. Here you can see the imprint that I made yesterday. This is the first imprint of my about 10 feet march that you saw before. This footprint by now is 18 hours old. I made it around 5 p.m. yesterday, and now is 11 a.m. the next day. Now I will make another one right next to it with the same pace, with the same boot, and then we will analyze them, the differences between them, and based on them I will show you the basic principles when it comes to aging. Aging is an area that requires work from you. I cannot show you everything because the video would take all day. After we analyze the differences between these two footprints, and when I tell you the basic principles, I will give you directions how to train it and how to practice this area so you can be more proficient in it in the future. Now is the time to make the next footprint. So here we have our two imprints, and now we will analyze the differences between them when it comes to their age. In this area, the main sense that we are going to use will not be sight, but touch. And the main tool that we are going to use will be a piece of stick like this that easily bends, very easily bends, but doesn't crack too easily. Now, the elements of the footprint that are the most interesting for us will be the wall of the track and floor of the track. I am going to check how hard is to penetrate the walls of the track with my stick and how easy it is to destroy the characteristics made by my boot on the track floor. So let's see. This is the newer one. I penetrate the walls of the imprint of the track, and I remember how much force do I have to use to do it. I remember the force. Now I do the same thing to the other one. Here we have to be cautious not to stumble upon the solid elements in the soil, like pines and pieces of other sticks, because we are only interested in the consistency of the soil, and stumbling upon solid elements will disrupt our readings. So I can feel that it is way easier for me to penetrate the wall of the older track than the wall of the newer one. Now I will check the same thing with destroying the characteristics on the floor. Let's see. Okay. I destroy this one. I destroy this one. This one. This one. And several parts of the track. Okay, I remember how much force it was. Now I will do the same thing here. I will try to destroy these elements. I will try to destroy it, to move it, alter it. Okay, and yet again I can feel that it is way easier for me to do it on the older one. Okay, why is that? This principle is governed by the specific mechanism. This mechanism is when you step on the ground, you compress the soil, you squeeze the air particles from between the particles of the soil, and this makes them closer to each other. They are not separated anymore by the areas of air from the atmosphere, and therefore they are closer together, and this implicates that the soil is more dense, and this equals it's harder to penetrate, it's tougher. When you walk further, you remove your boot, you remove the pressure. The atmospheric pressure pumps the air back again into between the grains of sand, the particles of soil, and this, on the other hand, makes the soil less dense, easier to penetrate for you. And that's exactly what I have felt here. This process takes time, and that time depends on many things, like temperature, like humidity, like weather, like part of the day, part of the year, and other that may alter the speed of this process. As a bonus, I can say that in the winter it goes the other way around. When the temperatures are around the freezing point, it will work like this. When you step on the snow, you compress it, you impose friction between the particles of snow. For the split second, you will melt the snow. And then you remove the pressure, the temperature goes back again to sub-freezing temperature, and it will freeze again. And from now on, the time passes, this imprint will get harder and harder and harder, because the particles of water will be turning into harder and harder ice. So very fortunately, we have now conditions, so I can show you the winter variation of track aging. Today at night it will be 14 Fahrenheit, so it's gonna be the coldest night since 1989. So this is very fortunate, and I will show you how this mechanism works in the winter. Okay, this track is like a half an hour old. So yet again, I take my stick, so I know how it bends, how it breaks, and I penetrate the walls of the track, and I remember how hard do I have to do that. Now I will check the floor of the track, and look at this. My stick will rather break than I can destroy this characteristic on the floor of the track. And now let me make another track for you, just like from now. And look at that. I take my stick and look, I can do whatever I want with the characteristics. See? Almost no force, and everything is destroyed like this. Here you must also take into account the principle that in temperatures really close to the freezing point in the sun, the very top of the layer of the snow can have temperature above freezing point and it can melt. And we have to pay attention which wall and which area of the floor we are investigating. The one in the shadow or the one in the light, because the temperatures in these areas will be different. And we can try it. Here it's pretty possible to do, and here it's possible to do too, but especially here it's harder. And the same applies to the characteristics. Okay, now as I talked for 3 minutes, then look again at these characteristics and see, here in the light I am still able to destroy everything. Here in the shadow, look, it's already frozen. I am able to destroy it still, but a lot harder than these ones in the sun. Okay, so these are the basic principles when it comes to aging. The rest of practice and learning I leave to you. Now I will give you advice on how to train it. Just make your own tracks on the soil and then check on them exactly like I did before during the course of the day, like every hour. Then leave the track for night. The next day check on it like every 2-3 hours. Then during the course of the week check on the track every 12 hours, and so on. From time to time you can also make the new imprint right next to it, so you can have direct comparison between them. So in general, this is all I can show you on this video, because otherwise, yet again, the video would be too long. Okay, now let's go to another area of tracking, which is environmental tracking. Follow me. Okay, so when it comes to the area of environmental tracking, I will show you on 2 examples, 2 aspects of this area that we have to know when we track or attempt to find tracks of the animal. So if we have access to knowledge of the geographical layout of our landscape, so in this case you can see the river bend and the forest that cuts this meadow-like area from the rest of the landscape. So now if we want to find animal tracks somewhere around, and we need to pick up the area when we will start, when we know the geography of our landscape is like this, as you can see, the best place to look for the initial tracks would be somewhere around here. So why is that? That's because the river is water, the main need of practically every animal. So when the animal wants to drink, it goes to the source of the water. As we can see here, there is forest. And as we know, mostly to access the water in the river, it is easier to do from the meadow-like non-forest area than from the straight forest, especially if it's thick. So animals do the same thing. They don't want to bother themselves like fighting the bushes and coming to the water, like risking some bruises and stuff. This is like not convenient to them. They will likely go to the meadow area and try to access water from here. And when we have like the sharp bend like this, we have area here, and this area like narrows the closer we are to the apex of the river bend right here. So it works like a funnel for us, for the animals too. They will be like funneled in this area, and the most density of the tracks should be around here. So that's the place that we would need to start. Another example is when we have two forests here and here, and they will traverse from one to another, and we have swamp or the lake in between. The animal will try to go the shortest way possible. It will encounter the obstacle, it will go the shortest way possible, very close to the edge of the obstacle. So this edge of the obstacle will be our place that we should start looking for our tracks. So this is clearly theoretical knowledge. This is like another layer we have to have in our head when we are trying to analyze the movement of animals around, not only using physical analysis of imprints and disturbances on the surface. We have to add the environmental aspect that will even more increase our chances of finding the animal. So that would be it when it comes to the environmental tracking, and now let's proceed to the next parts of the video. Okay, so it is time to go to another area of tracking, and that area is track interpretation. I will perform two marches, two walks. The first walk will involve me going normally, like normal pace, normal direction, like a normal walk. And then I will make a jump. The second march will involve me sneaking onto something, and then I will start sprinting. We will analyze the track using our tracker stick, using pace length, direction of the track, and of course we will analyze it using three basic characteristics of the track, which is track floor, track wall, and track horizon. Follow me. Okay, so let us proceed to analyze this walk number one. We can see here the tracks made in the initial stage of my walk. When I was walking normally, we can use our notch, our mark on the tracking stick, to do the same thing we did in case of trailing. We connect the points, the toe and the opposite side of the back of the foot. We scan for another track. It fits perfectly, just as you can see. The next one fits perfectly too. The object is walking normally. The floors of the tracks are intact. There are pretty clear impressions here. When we have normal clean walls of the track, quite clean floor of the track, no debris far away from the track in the horizon. We have normal axis of the track. We have normal pace length, just as we measured here. Everything is correct. Then we don't have anything to worry about. The object is walking normally. Okay, let's proceed to the next tracks. Okay, so this track is right the next one after the last one from the previous cut. Let us measure the next one, like correctly. We can scan. Everything is pretty much perfect. So okay, we can proceed to measure another one. Okay, there we go. And as you can see, now the point of the stick doesn't point to the middle of the track, but from the notch it points to the back of the track, right here. First indication that the pace lengthened for some reason. First thing we do, we look around if there are some obstacles. Maybe our object had to step over something. Maybe our object had to avoid something. If there is no obstacle around, then we can assume that our object is lengthening its pace for some reason. The front of the track here is a little deeper than this one. So we have now two indicators. I will make a close-up on this one and on this one so you can see, because we have yet another indicator that something's going on here, because the back of the track here is pretty clean. Same here, pretty clean back of the track. But here, as you can see, the back of the track is cracked. The snow is cracked, everything is cracked, and even we can see that some snow has been thrown from the front of the track to the back. So some force threw it from here to here, and we have cracks. So now we have three indicators. Deeper front here and here, longer pace and more disturbed back of the track here. So now let's close up so you can see a little better these two tracks, and then we will analyze the next one. Okay, that's the one. As you can see, the front is a little more deep than the previous one. Here, as you can see, you can compare them. And when we go further to the third track, here, you can see the back of the track that is way more disturbed than the previous ones. Okay, let's try to find the next track. Okay, so we analyze using our stick again. We scan, and nothing's here, but we have the indication that the back is more disturbed, the front is deeper, so we can expect that the more force was used here to propel some mass to the front. We know that it's gonna be a little further, so we scan. Okay, we see that, we see it, and now look at this. Let me close up a little. And as we can see, complete destruction. The back of the track is completely destroyed. The front is really deep. It's like 3 times deeper than the previous one and 6 times deeper than the normal sign from the normal pace. So as we can see, something serious happened here, and now we can expect that our object either started sprinting or jumped. So now we will look further. Despite we see that there is disturbance on the horizon, it's still symmetrical. So we will trail to the front. So let us try to find the next track. We assume that that was either start of the sprint or jump. So now we can assume that this pace will be much longer because of the force that we see here. We use practically the back of the stick, the maximum length of the stick, and we scan. And as you can see, even with that we cannot find the track, so we scan along the axis of the previous track, and we scan, and we find it. And this one has another indications that it was indeed a jump. So let me again make a close-up of this one. And as we can see, the track is deep, is yet again symmetrical, quite symmetrical. And the main indicator that this was indeed a jump, beside the huge pace length that cannot be like a length for sprint, because it's like more than 3 times longer than the normal pace that we measured before. The main indicator here is the depth of the back of the track. Just the opposite as the previous one. The previous one is really deep in the front. This one is really deep in the back of the track. So typically a human makes his steps from the back of his foot. He makes his steps like back to toes. So that's exactly what happened here, but multiplied times 5. We could see really deep front in the previous track and really deep back in this track. So that is how it would look when it comes to analyzing my first walk. So now let us analyze my second walk. Okay, so here we have the initial stage of my second walk. As you can see, 4 tracks. We will measure them. Starting from this track, we measure it again with our notch, with our normal pace. We connect the dots, we scan, and we see it, but it's way shorter. This pace is way shorter than normal. So yet again we analyze if there are any obstacles that our object had to overcome, and if not, then we can assume that our object slowed down for some reason. So now if we see the pace like this, when we establish the normal pace when it is shortened, then we use our loop to measure the shortened pace of our object. So to do that, we put our point of the stick on the track, maybe this one, on this track, and then we backtrack to the previous one. We measure where is the middle of it, and we put our loop in this place. In this case, we will put our loop here, tighten it a little, and now we have our shorter pace already marked. So this is like the basic stuff, and the one aspect that is a little more advanced for you, that will be the indication that the front of the track is like a little deeper, and we can see that even by the snow here, we can see that the snow was compressed more than in the back, and it is a strong indication that our object walked toes first, not the back first, but toes. Let me do a close-up for you. Right here, as you can see, snow on the front is more compressed than on the back. The front is a little deeper than the back, and this indicates that our object was walking toes first. People normally walk toes first when they want to be more quiet. So this is our second indication that something is going on here. So let's analyze the next tracks. We analyze again. We find the track, but look, it's completely destroyed. The back pretty much doesn't exist. The back is the horizon of the track, and a lot of debris is lying in the back like this. Exactly the same principles work here as they work in case of the jump. We don't really know that if it was a jump or start of the sprint, but as we can see here, the next track that is very similar to the previous one, the same, like a big force was used here to propel the mass of an object to the front. So if we have like tracks like this, which are like very deep and with destroyed horizon, floor and the walls, this is a strong indication that the object started sprinting and moving fast. So let's analyze the last three tracks, starting from this one and another two, so we can see how it works. Follow me. Okay, so here we have our last tracks. From this one, the object started moving faster. He had to propel its mass to certain bigger velocity, and this required to like apply a lot of force here. But here, as we can see, we can measure the pace. It's way longer than the shortened one. It's even longer than the normal one. What's important to know that this track, like everything, is like more disrupted than in the normal pace, but the velocity is already attained, so the object doesn't have anymore to put so much force to the ground. It has only to keep the velocity. So that's why this track is way more clean than this one. Let's check another one, exactly the same way, and we can see that the pace lengthened even more, and just like in this case, we can see a lot of force is used on the front, here and here. A lot less force is used here on the back. We establish its elongated pace when we know the object is running. Then we measure it with our another loop, exactly like in the case of the shortened pace. The tip of the stick to the middle, and we find the previous one, and we put the loop to the middle. It was already here. Almost. We tighten it, and now after this we have normal pace, shortened pace and elongated pace on our tracking stick. So from now on our object is already profiled, and we can use these three paces to track him more easily and more efficiently. And one more advanced aspect, but for that let me make a close-up just on these two tracks. Here what we have, except our normal basic characteristics, which are pace, length, and of course our three characteristics, floor, walls and horizon, we can see one more slight detail to it, and that is the indication that the force is like applied externally. from the axis of the sprint. Why is that? When we saw my previous walk, when I made a jump, there was no such thing, because I wanted to jump in certain area, and if I applied too much force to the sides, I would fly to the opposite side. So I didn't want that. I wanted to jump to the front. So these indications were not present. But here we can see the horizon of the track here is cracked way more than on this side, and here even this is visible even better. This horizon of the track is pretty clean, but the horizon here is way more disturbed than here. So with one step the force is going this way away, and in this case that way away. This is exactly what you see in ice skating, for example. The skaters want to propel themselves as much as they can, and the foot wants to have as much area as possible from which it can propel itself. I don't want to just propel myself from area that big. I want to propel myself from this area and all that area. So I have additional square inches of the ground from which I can propel myself. The same applies here. So that's why we can see these disturbances. And additionally, when the soil doesn't allow us to see these disturbances, we can see it also by measuring the axis of the track. In this case, the lines that are derived from our key points, these lines go outward more than in the case of our normal pace. These are the basics of track interpretation. So let us go to another area of tracking, the next one, which will be the basics of psychological tracking. Follow me. Okay, so let's get to another area of tracking, which is psychological tracking. As I said on the beginning of the video, I will not go really deep into this subject. I will show you only the basic physical aspects of the tracks to find out if your object was aware of or not, where it was going. From that information we can derive if the animal was maybe confused because it was lost, based on the area around and maybe tracks of predators nearby, if the animal was afraid of, or if it was surprised by something and had to look back, look to the right, to the left. So now on that white clean area behind me, I will perform a march just like before, but this time I will pretend that I am confused, scared. I look left, right, behind me, trying my best to imitate me being afraid of something. And then we will analyze my tracks to see what information we can get from them. So follow me. Okay, the first indication that we can see that the object is not pretty sure where it's going, that its pace is really shortened, even shorter than the shortened pace. This is our shortened pace that we established before, and even that is longer than this actual pace. The next indication is that the pace length is not regular. We will measure this. In this case, the pace length is this. In this case, the pace length is pretty much the same, a little maybe a little shorter, but in this case the pace is longer. This is the second indicator, that the pace length is irregular. Our third indicator is that the axis of the tracks, the directions of the tracks, are not so regular than in case of the regular walk. I will talk about this in more detail later. Just like in case of sneaking, they are less deep than in case of the normal walk. So when we know all of that our tracks are shallow, they are close to each other mostly, but also the length of the pace is irregular, and the axis of the tracks are not as regular as in the case of the normal walk, we can go to another aspect, to another track where I show you yet another indication that might tell us that our object is a little confused, it's not certain in terms of direction. Sometimes when we track the object and we can see all previous indications, from time to time, from track to track, we can see a track that indicates that the object was turning. Look at the floor of the track, wall of the track, and horizon of the track. The track is a little deeper on the right side than on the left side. The wall is also deeper and more disturbed on the right side than on the left side. And on the horizon of the track, there is more debris on the right than on the left. But despite of that, the next track is in the place where it should be if our object was walking normally. So why is that? That's because when we look to the left, to the right, on behind us, that leaves its impression on the ground. There is no way to avoid that. The fact is that our body, our torso, our head are carried by our legs, and our legs touch the ground by feet. So whatever we do with our upper body, however we shift our weight, it will have its impression on the ground. More or less visible, but it will be there. And just exactly like we can see here, the track indicates that the object was turning, but as you can see, let me zoom out a little, the object didn't turn, and that's exactly because of what I told you, that every move of our body has its reflection on the ground on our tracks. So now let's go to the next pair of our tracks, where I will show you in more detail how to tell if the axis indicate us that the object was confused. Okay, so here we have another pair. When we are walking normally and we connect the dots, the key points of our track, that is a toe, and that is toe, and the opposite side of the back of the foot. When we go normally, the axis will cross at similar and regular angles, like this. It will cross, cross, cross from track to track, when the object knows where it is going. When the object is confused, then these axes will be irregular. They will cross in different irregular angles, like wide or narrow, and sometimes, as you can see here and here, they will not cross at all. In the front, of course, because in the back they will, but in the front they will never cross. So when there are no additional obstacles around, like something that the object has to avoid, walk around, then when our lines do not cross, this is very strong indicator that our object was not fixed at any point or any direction when it was moving. So that tells us a lot when it comes to getting the information about the psychological state of our object. So when it comes to psychological tracking, these are the basic physical aspects of the tracks that we should look at when trying to obtain information about the psychological situation of our object. So to remember, very short pace, very delicate tracks, irregular pace length, tracks that indicate turning, and finally the axes of the tracks are irregular and they cross in irregular angles, or sometimes even they do not cross at all. As I said before, I will not go any deeper in this subject, so now let us proceed to the next parts of the video. Follow me. Okay, here I performed another march, another walk, perpendicular to the sun, to the light from the sun. And as we can see, the sun is not like very high. Maybe it's not a sunset, but it's definitely not noon anymore. And using that, I will show you maybe on this one, on this track here. I will zoom in on it. When the sun is shining on the angle, then we have this shadow and light conditions inside the track, on the floor of the track, and this makes the track like more distinguishable from the area around, and this makes our job a lot easier. That's why when you want to find a trail, then it is advised to go a little after the sunrise or a little before the sunset. The same principle I will show you at night using my flashlight and how to use it to your advantage. The same trick works at night when you use flashlight. I am using the red one because this one works the best for me, but you can use also other colors or just white light. Just like in case of the sun, when the sun is up, there are no shadows and lights on the bottom of the track, but when we can illuminate the track from the side, like from really low angle, just like this, then you can see it much better because of mentioned before shadows and lights on the track. Okay, so yet again simulation. It works like this. It's sunrise, the sun goes up, up, just like this, and no shadows and lights anymore, and then sun goes down to the low angle, like during the sunset, And yet again we have our shadows and lights on the floor of the truck, so it's visible better, just like now when I am using my flashlight. A very useful trick at night when you are tracking someone or something, if you want to analyze the track better. Okay, so let's continue. Another important aspect that I have to mention in my video is tracking on leaves or other unclear surfaces. Most of the time you will be forced to track on unclear areas, just like the one you can see in front of you. So now I will introduce basic principles that rule this micro area of tracking, which is tracking on unclear surfaces. Okay, so I will now perform the march, and after that march we will analyze how the surface has changed, what to look for, and what is most important in this area. Follow me. Okay, so here we have our surface after my march. This is a close-up so you can see everything. Okay, zoom out again. And now the first aspect that is very important is to find leaves that are higher than average. Leaves lie on the ground normally, and when somebody disturbs them, they flip, they change their position, and most of the time they end up being a little higher than the rest of the surface. Here we have our perfect example of our leaves that are higher than the surface. You can see how they are lifted above the ground, while the untouched leaves around here and around here on the other side are lower. This is the first tip that you have to know, and the other one is even more important, and this is the coloristic of particular leaves. What do I mean by this? For example, when you have a single leaf that fell off the tree, fell to the ground like this, and it's lying on the ground, and it's lying normally like this. Its top part, its upper part, is exposed to sun, to wind, to temperature changes, and to the weather in overall. So in the warm time of the year, on the top, it's most of the time dry or almost dry, like this. But the bottom of the leaf is faced to the ground, so it is exposed to moisture and water practically all the time. So this implies change in its color. As you can see right now, it's a little bit darker than this side, and here in particular it's very dry. On the bottom is dry too, but you can see it was exposed to water most of the time because of its darker color. And to confirm that, you can see like very basic beginnings of fungus and other microbiological life on the bottom side, which is not present or less present on the top side. So as we know it, and we see mostly bright leaves on the surface, it will catch our eye that one of them is higher and their darker side is exposed. Here, as you can see, this is a lot harder because, as I said before, it's dry. It's in the time when it's wet, you will see it way better. Okay, so when it comes to the video about tracking, that would be it. I think for just one video it's enough information for you to start learning and practicing by yourself. This was the main purpose of this video. If you find this video somehow really practical or useful to you, you can support me. Information on how to do it and the link is in the description of the video below. You might also want to check out my store, where I offer high quality pieces of outdoor equipment. If you'd be interested in class like this or other related to survival techniques and topics, you can contact me by email, by calling me, by private message on YouTube. Also, every contact information you can find on my website, link below. So, that would be it. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.